Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's assembly, or our Thursday thinking time. So let's look at today's photograph. So I wonder if you recognise this person. What are they doing? Where are they? Does anyone know this person's name? You may have heard of this lady. Her name's Amanda Gorman. She's 22 years old and she lives in America. She has a role called a Poet Laureate in America. So what is a Poet Laureate? Well, a Poet Laureate writes poetry for special occasions. And Amanda is the youngest ever Poet Laureate in the US at 22 years of age. So she wasn't in school that many years ago. Only 5 years ago, she was still in school. And now she is performing poetry and performing for many people. So where is she speaking in this photograph? Well, you may have heard lots of stories on the news about the inauguration of Joe Biden as the new US president. So inauguration really means just a sort of official ceremony, or the official process of becoming the US president. So the votes had happened a little while ago, and inauguration is the official ceremony when Joe Biden became the US president. And Amanda was asked to write a poem as the Poet Laureate, and she spoke in front of millions of people across the world. So in the actual place where she was, if any of you saw this on TV, people were fairly socially distanced and there weren't lots of people there in front of her, but it was broadcast across the world to millions and millions of people. So at the age of 22, I wonder how she felt as she was being filmed and performing her poem to everybody. I wonder how that would have made her feel, to be broadcasting to millions of people and speaking all over the world. Something really interesting about Amanda is that when she was a little girl, she struggled with her speech. So that was a particular difficulty of hers. And I don't think she would perhaps ever have imagined, or would she have ever imagined, that years later that she would be asked to write a poem for the inauguration of the new president and be seen on TV screens across the world. I think it says a lot about the future, how we don't know what the future holds for us, and therefore we can have a lot of hope about what might yet happen. Because Amanda, despite the fact she had these speech difficulties, managed to overcome those. And if any of you have watched the video of Amanda performing her poem, you will see how confidently she comes across and how clearly she speaks. So she managed to overcome great difficulties to be able to do this, perform her poem at this event. So we're going to look at some quotes from the poem. It's quite a long poem, and I was watching the video of it the other day, and a lot of it's quite complicated for children to understand. But there is a few lines that I think I'd like us just to look at. So her poem is called "The Hill We Climb." What do we mean by the hill that we're climbing? Are we actually talking about walking up a hill and climbing, or are we talking about something else? And I'm wondering, when we talk about climbing a hill within our language and our poetry like this, we might be thinking about perhaps the challenges ahead of us, things that that in front of us that might be a bit tricky. Now, here's some lines. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We close the divide. So what's that divide? Well, to me, that's the differences and the conflict between people, and the fighting and the arguments. To put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. I wonder what that means. Well, to me, it means that when we're putting our differences aside, we're understanding that we might have different viewpoints, we might have different opinions, we might have different feelings and thoughts about things, but we put those aside and we try to work together so that we can put our future first, so we can move forward and have some harmony. And that brings me on to the next line. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. We're looking harm. We're looking for no harm to come to anybody, and harmony for all. So what does it mean, harmony for all? Harmony to me is everybody getting on, peace, getting good relationships between people. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. So when we put our differences aside, we can make sure that nobody is hurt or harmed, and that we can have peaceful, good relationships and harmonious relationships. Let's look at another part. This is the end to her poem, and actually when you look at some of the lines of the poem online, there's many quotes and pictures, because these final words have really meant a lot to lots of people. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we are brave enough to see it, if only we are brave enough to be it. I wonder what that means. There is always light. What could we mean by always light? Well, to me, I think you could replace the word light with hope. For there is always hope, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we are brave enough to be it, to be hopeful, to see the hope, and to view things in a different way. Some very powerful words that can really help us at times when we might not be feeling very hopeful, because there is always hope, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. Here's some activities that you might want to do following today's assembly. Amanda says there is always light if we're brave enough to see it. Could you draw a picture showing that light emerging from the darkness? Amanda says we should look to the future. What are you looking forward to in the future? What would you like to do once lockdown ends? Could you draw or write about what you're looking forward to when the restrictions have ended? And there's various quotes that I've shared with you today. Could you choose one of these to make a poster? Perhaps you could create some images to complement and support Amanda's words. So you might want to take the line about there's always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. Or you might want to think about the line about harmony, and about harmony for all and everybody getting on. I'd love to see your ideas. There is always hope. There is always light, if only we are brave enough to see it, if only we are brave enough to be it. Have a good day, everyone, and I'll see you next time.